Welcome back to the final video of the ACT checklist guide. In this video, we are going to be looking at the final preparations before your workshop. So previously we set up a session and we downloaded a bunch of materials that we can use for the workshop itself. And now the workshop is upcoming tomorrow. And I want to do the final things before I am completely ready for that workshop. What I'm going to do, first of all, is that I'm going to check out my session that I created previously. Before I let people into this session, I just want to check if everything works all right. So what I'm going to do is copy the link for the session and then just enter it myself. I am now asked to select a group, and remember previously we made a test group exactly for this purpose. So I can go in safely here, test out a few things and make sure that everything is running as intended before I onboard my participants. So I'm just going to open the test group. And I can see that I'm in the team challenge. That's good. That's what I wanted. I see that the game opens perfectly well, so no need for concern there. And everything seems to be in order. So that gives me confidence for my workshop tomorrow. I'm now ready to onboard my participants. And for the onboarding process, there are typically 3 different ways of onboarding participants into an active workshop. And if I log back in here and check out my session with the host view, there are now 3 different ways of onboarding people that I can choose from. Everything is contained in the Share Session button right here. So if I click Share Session, there are now a couple of different ways I can onboard my participants. The first and most simple one is using the link that I just demonstrated. If they have access to links, if you can send your participants a link before your workshop, you can use this feature. But if you're in a face-to-face workshop where you don't necessarily have access to their email addresses or a platform like Teams where you can send out the link and share it with all your participants, what you can do instead is use the session name right here. So when they go, for an example, to acti.com right here and hit the login button, then they will be asked for a session ID. And this is actually just the name of your session. You can just put in the name of your session right here and hit the join button. And then everything works as it would if you had used a link. Finally, there's an option to share the session via email. So if I go in here and I find a colleague of mine that I want to invite, I then hit continue. And now this person has been added to the session and will get an email notification where they can access it. So those are 3 separate ways of joining a session. We recommend generally, if you are running any sort of virtual setup, always use the link. It's easy to just send out a link and people can just onboard through that. If you're running a face-to-face workshop, you can also use the link, but it's often easier to use the session ID in a face-to-face workshop because you can just say this out loud or you can put it on a white screen, whatever you prefer. Entering with the session ID is super easy when you're in a face-to-face workshop. And finally, if you would like for people to just play at their own pace, not necessarily in a workshop setting where everyone is together at the same time and you play through the game, you can use either the link or the email invitation if you just want to share a game with one of your colleagues. So if you're not playing exactly at the same time, use a link or the email invitation. Good. We now tested the session. It runs perfectly smooth. I am ready to onboard my participants in my session tomorrow. So now there are just a few things that I'm missing. And for the next session, we are going to need a different camera angle. All right, so here is the setup I went with for my upcoming workshop. So I have planned here for a face-to-face workshop using 3 computers. That would mean either 3 players or 3 groups of players sitting around just one computer. I have prepared my floorboard here. It's not mandatory, but do use it if you have it. To go alongside the floorboard, I have the boats right here. These can help the players visualize their progression throughout the game and try to come to terms with how well have they done compared to other groups. We then have the floorboard signs, and these can help the players understand the model behind the game. So if you are using a specific theory framework, or if you're discussing a specific theory framework as you play the game, you can download these, you can put them into these plastic holders that go alongside the floorboard, and you can use those to visualize the model on the game board. I then have my facilitation guide for the Patrick Lencioni game that we chose. I have a script book, so I can help manage time throughout the workshop itself. And then I have the 3 computers with just regular internet access. You don't need to download anything to play active games. You just use whichever browser you prefer, and that's pretty much it. So this is going to be the tools that I'm using for my workshop, alongside, of course, the host view and the PowerPoint presentations that I prepared initially. The next step is, of course, to wait for your participants to join you and to get started. So in the next step, we are going to talk about the onboarding process. So for the onboarding process, we are now back at the host view right here. And as I mentioned in a previous video, there are multiple ways you can onboard your participants into your session. In my particular workshop setting, the one I just showed you, I am going to instruct my participants to use the session ID found right here. So the way that would work is that whenever one of your players are ready to play, they go to the Acti subscription that you have. Mine is called anastest.acti.com. When I go here, I am asked for a session ID, and here we can put in the ID that I created for my session. This is why we want to keep the ID very simple, because the less typing your participants would have to do, the better it is. In this case, it's called Preview 220526, and once I am ready to join this session, I simply hit the Join button. I then enter a guest name. I hit Continue, select my position, and now I'm asked to select one of the groups. So if you're playing the Team Challenge version, it is very important that at this stage that you instruct your participants to select the right group. So already before they start playing, instruct them to tell them which group they're in, and make sure that they get that, because otherwise you need to move them into different groups at a later stage. So always instruct them to select the right group by giving them a group number from the very start. Let's imagine I'm going to go as group number 1. I hit select here, and now I can start playing. Okay, so now I finished the game as a guest user, and the next thing is, of course, to look into the data or the profile tool that I generated when playing through this game. If you are playing with people who would like to continue playing at a later stage, they can actually save their data by registering a user at this point. Once we hit continue after completing the game, we then get to rate the game. And for guest users, they are going to receive this bar up here where you can actually create an account. So all I would have to do is hit the create an account right here. I can log in with an existing one or create a new user by registering right here. Once I complete this flow, this data is then saved onto my new profile. And if I then log in with this user at a later stage to play a different game, I will still have access to the profile I generated through this game. So it's a good idea to have your guest users register a user by the end of the session, especially if you're going to run sessions at a later stage as well. The final thing we need to look into is, of course, the host view. So now we have one person who has played through the game. We have the game right here. we are back at the session overview. And if I then go to the host view button, I can now see the person that just played, which was obviously me, but when you have multiple people playing here, they are going to pop in as different groups out here on the right-hand side. So this is where you can keep an eye on your participants as they go through the game. You can get a live feed of what happens throughout the game, and that can help you control the pace of your workshop alongside the script that we downloaded. If we go to the profile section here, you can even see the distribution of choices along different types of choices throughout this game for the people who have been playing. So you can compare groups if there are multiple in here. This is pretty much everything you need to be aware of when setting up your Acti session. So just to clarify, we have created a session with a specific game and a specific way of playing the game, meaning the game mode. We then tested the game and made sure that everything went well. We added a couple of extra groups to the team challenge game so that we ensured that there's going to be room for everybody, and I was able to test myself using that one of those extra groups. Then we looked into the physical materials, the handouts, the facilitation guide, all of those things that can support your process in the workshop. Finally, we have been looking into the materials that we are going to use for the workshop itself. So that would mean the floorboard, the computers. I brought computers in this particular case, but in most cases, people can play on their own computers or their own cell phones. It's completely up to you how you set it up, but there needs to be some sort of a device with an internet access to be able to play these games. So that's important to keep in mind. We hope that the checklist guide has been helpful in preparing you for your upcoming workshops. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're always ready to help. Thank you.